Before we jump into this podcast, let's just have a first word from our sponsors, NordVPN, the fastest VPN in the world and an absolute essential travelling companion. You can use NordVPN on 10 devices with just one account, easily switching your virtual location to access apps and websites in other countries. But if you're out of the country, make sure that you've got NordVPN to be able to use your subscriptions and watch the live sport that you might miss. If you're at home, use it to see if you can save money with products that might be cheaper in another region. Go to nordvpn.com/Manchester to get 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. The link is also in the podcast description.
Hello and welcome to the Manchester is Red podcast. My name is Steven Railston, back again to host today's episode, and we've got a new face beside us on the sofa because I'm joined by David McDonnell. David, great to have you here. It's probably unexpected for yourself in the weird world of reach. You've joined the MEN team. How does it feel?
Yeah, it feels good. I mean, I think it's important to point out I've been on the Mirror now 24 years covering Manchester United. So I'm not leaving the Mirror. But my role has been broadened, shall we say, to encompass the MEN. So I'll be covering Manchester United as the chief Manchester United correspondent for the Mirror and the other Reach titles, including the Manchester Evening News. So yeah, very excited to get going.
I think you were described as a veteran journalist in the article yesterday. How did that feel?
It's accurate, yeah. I mean, I've been doing it 25 years, so you're probably at school when primary school, probably. Yeah, I'll take veteran. I mean, you know, it's accurate. I've been around the block, and obviously, you know, still here in terms of, you know, survived Ferguson, Sir Alex, and all the subsequent managers who've tried and failed to match his success. So yeah, still here and still enjoying it.
Unfortunately for you, you'll have to be working with me a lot more closely in the coming months. We'll just look back on the game then, David. We'll start with the Chelsea match, of course, because we're both there on Saturday evening. Ruben Amorim really needed a win after the Manchester City defeat 3-0. It was incredibly disappointing. Some of the statistics that came out of that were sobering, weren't there? So there was a lot of pressure going into that game, but United delivered, secured a really important victory. A really strong performance in the first half, obviously the Chelsea red card, but United were good, weren't they? They were really good. Yeah, they were. I think that's probably the best. I mean, look, it's a low bar, let's be honest. It's probably the best they played under Ruben Amorim in terms of the intensity, in terms of the commitment and the aggression. I think that's one of the messages he said in the build-up to the game. He wanted to see that aggression, and then much was made of that lack of aggression in the fallout from the defeat in the derby. You had people like Wayne Rooney saying, you know, he just wanted to see a tackle getting put in, someone, you know, getting a yellow card to show, come on, we're not standing for this. And there was none of that. So I think that was the contrast, you know, between the two games. You saw that aggression, you saw that commitment, you saw that passion and that intensity, and that kind of. The dynamic was completely different, I think, and that's what United fans wanted to see. And you know, the atmosphere, you were there. The atmosphere was electric on Saturday, and you know, with the best will in the world, it can be a little bit moribund sometimes at United. It's on the players to get the fans going, and they certainly did that on Saturday. And that, as I say, that intensity, you know, you go through the whole team. It was you know, throughout the whole team, they were all committed in tackles, in pushing forward, in defending. And I think it was a real performance for something to build on for Ruben Amorim and the players. Now, whether they can or not, we've been here before, haven't we? I think that's only 9 wins in 32 Premier League games, and they've not achieved back-to-back Premier League wins, which is shocking. I think even David Moyes managed to do that in his ill-fated 10 months in charge. I think he managed to do it on 7 occasions, win back-to-back games. So that really is something that Ruben Amorim has to address. But if that was a platform, then it was certainly a really positive one, and they have to now take that momentum into the Brentford game on Saturday lunchtime. The 5:30 kickoff really helps, doesn't it, with the atmosphere?
Yeah, massively.
You could tell the fans were straight up for it from the first whistle. And obviously that red card was just 4 minutes in. Sanchez had a howler there, didn't he? Yeah. Rushing out. I've seen some pundits in the aftermath saying perhaps it wasn't a sending off. No. I mean, come on. It was clear and obvious, wasn't it? It was a goal-scoring opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I love the camera panning to Sir Alex Ferguson in the director's box. And you can,
was brilliant.
You can mouth it saying, he's got to go. Yeah. And everyone, there was no complaints. And I think the other thing that was interesting as well, there was a camera angle from behind Enzo Maresca, and it kind of takes in the foul where Sanchez takes out Mbeumo. And he just turns and shakes his head. He knows it's a red card. You know, the opposition manager knows it's a red card. I think anybody in the stadium, you know, should question that. It was a straight red card. It was serious foul play, denial of a goal scoring opportunity. It's a red card. And as you say, Steve, that kind of galvanised the fans. And, Ruben Amorim talked, I think, in the pre-match press conference about luck, not so much needing fortune, but needing a break, and they got that with that. Now, it was down to their own good play that red card happened, because obviously, the long ball from Bayendier, the flick on from Sesko.
The ball was good from Bayendier, wasn't it?
It was
I didn't
a great
actually
move.
realise at first, because the header from Sesko was so good, the flick on, and then Burmo did brilliantly to latch onto it. But the ball from Bayendier, I've given him a lot of stick at the start of the season, but it was a great pass forward.
Yeah, and also they've clearly worked on that on the training ground. And anyone who's watching Buemo play, those runs in from behind, those kind of diagonal runs in behind the defence, that's what he did all the time at Brentford. And he got a lot of his goals from those kind of runs in behind the defence. So it was clearly a move that was taken from the training ground onto the pitch, and it worked to perfection. It drew the foul from Sanchez. The bonus was a red card, and from there on, United got to the 2-0 lead, and then, as we all know, Casemiro's
we'll come on to that in a second.
Discipline made it more difficult than it need have been.
You talk about kind of fine margins and kind of little bits of luck. I mean, even Fernandes' goal, I initially thought that was offside when I looked at the replay. He did brilliantly, again, to get him behind and kind of poke home. Casemiro then scores. He loves a headed goal, doesn't he?
He does,
He's really good in the box. And then they've got that 2-0 lead. They are cruising into half-time. And you're thinking, can it be 3? Can it be 4? And then Casemiro goes and does that. It was probably soft. I think you'd probably agree, would you? Yeah. However, you're giving the referee a decision when Chelsea have 10 men. And if he's having doubts about other refereeing decisions, you're giving an opportunity to level the teams up, aren't you? Yeah. And you can't give the referee that decision. For a player so experienced, I thought it was a bit silly.
Yeah, I mean, that was the most galling thing, I think, if it had been, say, I don't know, Patrick Dorgu or someone, or Ahmad or someone, less experienced than Casemiro. But you're talking about a guy who's won 5 Champions League titles. One of the most decorated players of the modern era. He should know better. And he'll know that. And Ruben Amorim said that afterwards, that tackle was born out of wanting, caring so much and wanting to win, and that winning mentality that he's got. But you can't afford, as you say, Steve, to give the referee that kind of decision to make, because even though it was a soft yellow card, I mean, really, no one really felt that it warranted a caution. You're giving the referee, that ability to issue a second caution and a subsequent red, and as we all know, that's what happened, and that made it more difficult than it needed been for United. And of course, that and then saw Sesko, get substituted at half time, which I thought was unfair, but I understood it. It was a tactical substitution, but I mean, he had such a good first half, and a lot's been made about the fact that he's not scored yet. That he's only had 2 Premier League starts, obviously against City and Chelsea at the weekend, but he played such a key role, I thought, in that first half. On and off the ball.
His movement was very good.
Movement was good, and he kind of pinned the defenders back, Chelsea defenders back, and I think he put Ahmad through on goal, and Ahmad kind of hesitated, took the ball out of play, but he was really alert, really lively, a lot of energy about him, great movement, as you say. And I think it was a shame for him that he was taken off at half time, but understandable given the circumstances. But unfortunately, that's what happened. Casemiro's red card kind of forced Amorim's hand in that sense.
It got nervous towards the end, didn't it? I mean, the last 10 minutes. Chalobah scores, and we're all thinking, bloody hell, not again, surely. Yeah. After being in such a strong position coming into half time before the
and you don't want to rewrite it at half
well,
7.
from a journalist's perspective, we're all thinking, don't bloody concede, aren't we?
We've got all these pieces written to go. You don't want to have
it seems to happen
hasty rewrite.
So much with United, though, doesn't it? Where there's, either way, either the opposition are scoring or United are getting a late goal.
I've been there many times over 25 years. Yeah. United, it's late goals for and against. They never do things the easy way.
And Amorim said that, didn't he? He said we always complicate it, and there is an element of that. Even when they win, think before the international break, Burnley, they should have kind of comfortably won that game.
Yeah,
they needed extra time and a penalty to wrap up the win just before the break. It's slightly frustrating, that, isn't it? And United fans sitting at Old Trafford when the rain was chucking down, were thinking, can we not just win 3, 4, 5-0 for once?
Yeah, it does seem to be a theme. It's in the club's DNA, if you like. A theme that United kind of have to drag their fans and journalists and everybody through the mire and do it the hard way. And that's what we spoke to Luke Shaw afterwards in the mix zone, and the message from him was one of relief, and you could feel that at the final whistle. The sense of relief when they finally got over the line, because Chelsea were pushing for that late equaliser. The kind of sense of relief was palpable. And although Luke Shaw said, it was relief at getting the win and getting the 3 points, they have to be more consistent. They have to, if they get a 2-0 lead, they have to go on and make it 3, make it 4. And that lack of consistency, and playing sort of well for half an hour or 45 minutes, they've got to do it for the duration of the game. They've got to do it, in both halves. It can't just be for a certain spell and then as we saw on Saturday, and then kind of tail off. So I think that's the challenge for Ruben now, to get a 90-minute performance out of these players. And we've seen it in the past. We saw it against Everton. I think in the second game in charge they won 4-0, and that was after the famous
Marcus Rashford scored twice, didn't he?
Yeah, Marcus scored twice, and I think that was a game where Ruben said, "Don't worry, this was a great result, but we didn't play that well, and a storm will come." And of course it did. I think 3 days later they lost 2-0 to Arsenal away. So, as I said earlier, they've not managed to win back-to-back Premier League games. They've got to develop that consistency of, firstly, performance and then results. I mean, obviously, we all know results are the most important thing, because that's what ultimately managers and teams are judged by. And, the league table doesn't lie. But I think fans want to see a consistency of performance. And with that, you would think the results will come. So that's certainly the challenge for them, to build on that from Saturday.
Yeah, it'd be a wasted opportunity, wouldn't it? And we've spoken about that record so much, that Amorim has failed to win back-to-back league games. So they really need to get a win over the line against Brentford this weekend. Should we touch on Luke Shaw a bit more then, David? Because he was obviously down in the mix when he spoke after the game. And Roy Keane was very critical after the Manchester derby. Said he'd given up for one of the goals. Was it Phil Foden's, the opener?
He kind of pulled out the challenge, didn't he, I think? Yeah.
And it was really scathing, as you'd expect from Roy Keane after a bad derby defeat. But fair play to Shaw, because he came out, he's fronted up. He said, actually, that Roy Keane was right with his analysis.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't really need him to tell us that, but he's right, and I'll try improve. And I thought it was refreshing to read those quotes from Shaw.
Yeah, I mean, I was the one that asked him the question. I mean, a group of us were down there in the mix zone, and he talked about the game, and suddenly I remembered, of course, this was the first opportunity we'd had to speak to Luke since that, brutal and, very scathing, as you say, and personal criticism from Roy Keane. So we only had a couple of questions left, and I said to Luke, look, you came in for some pretty harsh criticism from Roy Keane after the derby. Was that fair? What did you make of that? And I was surprised, because normally players would bristle at that kind of thing and would take umbrage at it and sort of say, well, I think he's out of order. It's not for him to say that. It was too personal. But it was refreshing to hear Luke Shaw say, no, I wasn't at the level required for Manchester United. I wasn't at the level I know I can play at. Roy Keane's one of the most inspirational, greatest captains to play for Manchester United. And so whenever he says something, it carries a certain weight and clout. And he was right. Shaw, I think, pulled out of the challenge, didn't he? When Doku went past him,
he could have done better for all three, really, couldn't
he? And then the second goal, I think he
was never going to win the race with Haaland. He was never going to win that.
But Haaland got in between him and De Ligt, I think, as well.
Lauro lost the ball, did he? I think towards the byline, and then the ball was played through. And once Haaland latched onto it and got him behind, Shaw was never going to win.
Yeah, he's not going to win that physical battle. But yeah, so he was very honest and very sort of spoke with a lot of candour about the fact that his standards are higher than that. I mean, obviously he's had a torrid time with injuries, and people hold that against him, which is tough for him, because no player wants to be injured, and no player sets out to be injured. It's just happened for Luke. But when he is fit and when he's at his best, he's a phenomenal defender, phenomenal versatile defender as well. Can play obviously left back, left side of a central three, as he is at the moment. And that was typified by, I think there was a challenge towards the end where it was a great recovery tackle from Shaw, I think on Santos, when Chelsea were, as we said, pushing for an equaliser, and he sprints towards the centre circle and dispossesses Santos.
Even his role in sorry to interrupt, David, the goal, the Casemiro's goal, he reacted brilliantly to get his head up, sprint across, because I think Harry Maguire was actually credited with the assist.
Yeah,
definitely came off Shaw's head.
Sure, definitely, yeah. But I think that probably points to the fact that all of them didn't perform at the level they know they can at Manchester City in that defeat. And so I think they all felt collectively that they owed the fans a performance. And you saw that with De Ligt as well. Matthijs De Ligt was immense. I thought Harry Maguire was superb for his first start of the season. So I think, as I said at the start, the outset, you can go through the whole team and pick out players. They all delivered, within their certain roles. And I think, as I said, there's a lot there for Amorim to build on, certainly going forward. And that has to be the goal now, because you can't keep having one step forward, two steps back, because that doesn't do anybody any good.
You spoke about the aggression there, and I thought that was really interesting. It was evident, wasn't it, watching the performance? There was a few moments, I think Ahmad won a challenge down by the Stretford end. He booted the ball out and the fans got whipped up. There was a moment when Harry Maguire, with a slide challenge, and
that's the one I was going to mention,
and he tapped him on his shoulder to rub his face in it, didn't he? So there was bits and pieces like that all over the pitch, and it was really nice to see as you're right, it's probably a response to the Manchester derby and producing what the fans wanted to see and going out there. And it was a real spirited display, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Maguire one, I thought that was, I mean, obviously, other than the sort of 2 goals, I thought that was the biggest cheer of the afternoon when Maguire slid across the turf.
And football's not hard, is it? Do the basic things right and you'll get a response from fans. Like if you're running hard and tackling well and really putting your body on the line, it gets a great response, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course it does. And the fans, I mean, the cheer was phenomenal when that went up. It was, the decibel level went up, several notches. And as you say, he ran past João Pedro, wasn't it? And sort of barged him on the way past it to sort of let him know, look, there's more where that came from.
I like that.
I'm going to win that personal battle. And fans, as you say, Steve, respond to that. They like to see that passion. I think too often, not just under Ruben, but too often, in the kind of post-Alex Ferguson era, Man United teams have wilted. They've not shown that passion. They've not shown that aggression. They've not, they've not been there. They've not been at the races at all. And I think that's, we talk about systems and formation and tactics, but an integral part of that as well is passion, is having that desire and having that hunger. And displaying that, and that can galvanise not only
4-4-2, David. Get it up the striker, have passion, and put your foot in.
Get up to the big lad. But that can galvanise teammates. It can galvanise fans. It just has a really knock-on effect throughout everybody in the stadium. So, and I think that was one of the most evident things that I took away from Saturday evening was the atmosphere and the passion that was generated by the team and the fans. And that's what United have got to get back to.
Fernandes was fantastic. I thought he was everywhere, wasn't he? I was probably of the opinion that he should be moved further forward. I kind of made the point that he was struggling with the defensive aspects of this deeper midfield role. He lost Phil Foden at the Etihad, Smith Rowe as well at Craven Cottage. So I thought maybe it was time to move him forward. Amorim's continued with him in the pivot, obviously the weekend, and he was fantastic. Fair play to him. Decision was vindicated. When he was brought off, there was a clip of him on the bench. It was almost Ronaldo-esque. Was it Euro 2016 final when he's on the touchline and he's screaming them on? It was very similar to that from Fernandes. But there was some brilliant milestones as well, because that is 100th goal for the club.
200th appearance.
In the 200th appearance. Some lovely symmetry there, isn't it?
Yeah,
brilliant.
And of course, I think Maguire made his 250th appearance at City. Yeah, I mean, look, the debate around Bruno Fernandes will always rage because he's like Marmite, love him or hate him. And, opposing fans don't like him. They think he's too emotional, all the histrionics and everything. But that's his nature. And I think he gave a very good interview to the BBC beforehand where he says, I'll never change. That's me, the Bruno who I am, is inherent within me. I can't change my personality. I'm a passionate guy. I'll always be this way. And also the debate about his best position will always rage. Now, the problem you've got, as we know, Amorim is wedded to this 3-4-3 or 3-4-2-1, whichever way you want to look at it, formation. That if you're going to play Cunha and Mbeumo, which he's obviously going to do in those kind of 2 number 10 roles, and Sesko up the top, Fernandes has got to play in one of the midfield roles. Otherwise you take one of them out and then you put in there. It's difficult. And United aren't blessed with a lot of great midfielders. I mean, obviously there's a debate about Kobbie Mainoo. Obviously he hasn't started the Premier League game this season, and there's a clamour for him to get that first start. But I think Bruno showed, as you said, Steve, on Saturday, that he can operate in that role effectively. I mean, again, he was another one that was tracking back and making challenges, which is what you don't associate with Bruno.
We know he can, and he can perform anywhere, can't he? But it was refreshing to see it. I mean, obviously they had 10 men for a large part of the first half before the teams were levelled, but it was refreshing to see that kind of performance. And you're right, there has been a conversation about whether he should be a bit higher or lower. But do you think, just based on the personnel that United have now, that he probably just has to stick in the deeper role? Because as you've said, he would have to share minutes with Mbeumo and Cunha, and ideally they'd be in everyone's starting teams each weekend.
Yeah, listen, the only way Bruno Fernandes is going to come out of that central midfield role is if Amorim changes his system. And as we've known,
the Pope, even if the Pope asks him to change his system, he's not going to change his system. So
it's not going to happen anytime soon. He's made that clear. Although, again, just going off at a tangent there, it's strange being at his press conferences. You get kind of mixed messages from Ruben, because on the one hand he says, no, if I was a player in the dressing room and I suddenly changed, the manager suddenly changed the system after all this time, I'd be thinking, hang on, what's this guy about? He's not got the courage of his convictions. And yet in the same sentence, if a few words later, he'll say, but I will change at some stage. So it is a bit mixed messages. But I think for the time being, he is wedded to this 3 at the back, 4 and 3 up front. So in that context, Bruno is going to stay in midfield, probably alongside Casemiro, although Casemiro is suspended now for Brentford on Saturday. So that opens the door possibly for Kobbie Mainoo, or I would say more likely probably Manuel Ugarte. given Ruben's preference for him over Cobby. But with Bruno, I mean, he's the kind of player that will play anywhere. You know, he's that committed to the team. He will fulfill any role that is asked of him by the manager. I think probably he would like to play a bit further forward, as he did under Erik ten Hag, and have more freedom and have to do less of the defensive work. But as I say, as he showed on Saturday, he covers so much ground. His engine, his industry, his work rate, his work ethic, it's just phenomenal. And I've lost count of the stats, but I mean, I think he only missed like one game through injury, or maybe not even that in the last season and a half, 2 seasons. I mean, it's remarkable. His availability is absolutely extraordinary. So, to have a player with that kind of sort of work ethic, as I say, and industry is a manager's dream. And he, as I say, covered so much ground and made so many challenges, and I think towards the end he forced a great save from Jorgensen, the run was keeper.
Fair play, because to have that energy at that stage of the game.
What was it, about 80th minute?
I think he was substituted on 70, so it would have been before.
Before then.
It felt later, didn't it? I think because the game was becoming stretched, but it was a brilliant drive and run. And I thought he was going to score at the stretch for them.
It was a phenomenal shot as well.
It was a good save, to be fair, and that would have wrapped up. It would have been 3-1 at that stage, wouldn't it? Or it would have been 3-0.
Yeah.
I've lost track of when Chelsea scored.
Yeah, they scored 10 minutes, 80th minute, Chalobah's goal.
Should we talk about Amorim's preference to substitute the centre-backs? Because I think it's an interesting point. Yoro came on for Maguire with 20 minutes to go. That's why I'm getting confused. It was interesting that Yoro was named on the bench. I think everyone's eyebrows raised slightly when the teams were confirmed to see that. I thought perhaps Shaw would be dropped and Maguire would be brought in, but it was Yoro who was named on the bench after the derby. Maguire was fantastic. It made sense to bring him in, I think, at this stage. And he had a really good season on an individual basis last year, didn't he?
Yeah.
And I think he would be in my preferred starting 11. De Ligt, Maguire and Yoro would be my preferred back three.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I think that's a really solid back three. But Amorim likes to change his centre-backs in the latter stages of the game quite often. We've seen it time and time again where he'll make changes when necessarily it doesn't make sense. And obviously, Yoro came on. The ball that was played in the box, it was Yoro who went for the ball.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself straight away, Harry Maguire would have cleared that.
Yeah.
Having said that, I think maybe Maguire did have an injury. It was his first start of the season in the Premier League.
I think that was probably a factor.
Yeah, definitely. But Amorim does make these changes, doesn't he? And he has done in previous games. What have you thought about them?
Strange, because managers don't tend to make defensive substitutions. Certainly their centre-backs, they don't tend to change them unless, through necessity, if of injury or whatever.
And it might have been with Maguire. It did seem like he had a knock or he was struggling a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm told that Amorim is... Someone's telling me that Amorim is petrified of getting injuries. I mean, the squad isn't that deep, really, if you think about it. Obviously, Lisandro Martinez is still coming back. So I think he was exercising a lot of caution with Harry Maguire. As you said, Steve, it was his first start of the season, first league start of the season. And for him to come off after 70 minutes, it raised a few eyebrows, but he doesn't... I think Ruben talks about players being in the red zone. I mean, Erik ten Hag talked about the red zone as well, where if you push them too much, particularly if it's one of their first sort of starts for a while, and they're played at such a high level of intensity, and you don't want to sort of put them at risk of injury or put them at risk of missing the next game or fatigue or whatever, or just exerting them too much. So I think it was probably out of caution. But it's a strange one. It is a strange one because, as you say, you would think that managers like to have a settled defence,
especially when it's an area where they are pretty fragile and they do concede goals. You'd like to have that settled back three just to see out the game. They're in their rhythm. They're playing well. It makes sense to see the result out sometimes, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I think Maguire played so well on Saturday that I can see him keeping his place, for Brentford. And Yoro didn't have the greatest game. I know you said he had a great season last season. He did. No one had a great game in the 3-0 defeat at Manchester City. Let's be honest. But Yoro, I felt, was a little bit exposed. He didn't kind of squeeze up into the that space between sort of midfield and defence. As part of that back three. I felt at times he was a little bit exposed. But look, they all were. We talked about Shaw and De Ligt, being sort of exposed in that defeat as well. So I think players have to get used to Amorim rotating. It's just what he does and what he feels he has to do in order to keep players fresh and to avoid losing them for any prolonged period.
7 points then they've got on the table, up to 11th. Busy heights, fantastic.
It works out. It's the lunchtime kickoff, isn't it, on Saturday?
Yeah,
so if they win at Brentford, it's a big if, I know, because as we said, they've not done back-to-back wins.
Go up to fourth.
They go up to fourth, is it, or fifth?
Yeah. So I mean,
Well, for until the later kickoffs.
objectively, it has been a disappointing start. But it's funny, isn't it, how one result completely changes the mood.
Yeah.
And you think they've already played Arsenal, Chelsea, who's the third I'm forgetting?
Manchester City.
Yeah. The weekend before. So
Yeah.
there's 3 of the best teams in the league
Yeah.
there who will be competing for Champions League football. And the 1 point off of Chelsea at the moment, level on points with City.
The City, yeah.
What crisis?
Yeah, listen, I mean, we're so early in the season.
It's a funny game, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think we're early in the season, but everything goes back to last season. It was such a disastrous season. Let's be honest about that. Finishing 15th, not qualifying for Europe for only the second time in 35 years. You can't just take this season in isolation. And
Amorim said that, didn't he, at his press conference when he was talking about his discussion with Ratcliffe. He said Ratcliffe said for him, this is essentially his first season. But he said, for me, it's not.
But that in a sense, yeah, for him it's not. But that in a sense brings more pressure, doesn't it? Because people have talked about him not having a full pre-season. And Ruben himself said, didn't he, on countless occasions, I wanted to see out last season with Sporting Lisbon and then come to Manchester United in the summer. But United said it's now or never. If you don't come, we'll go on to someone else. We'll go to a different candidate. So he wanted to see out the season and have that full pre-season. He's had the full pre-season. He's been backed in the transfer market to the tune of 235, 40 million with big signings like Cunha and Buemo, Sesko. Lammens obviously has arrived as well. So he has to deliver now. He has to deliver that. And I think he's been honest, as he is, Ruben, he's great with us journalists. I mean, you want a manager to be open and honest. He's probably one of the most open.
Sometimes too honest.
Probably too honest for his own good, certainly. Great for us, great copy. But he's honest and said, look, there are no excuses now. We have to, all the credit, I think he said in America, we were on the pre-season tour in our interview with him, and he said, all the credit I had in the bank last season is gone. Now, as you know, Steve, the match-going Manchester United fans rarely, if ever, turn on a manager. Even when results are going, south, they stay loyal to the team, loyal to the manager. And Ruben has had that. But he knows that he has to deliver this season. And, so far, 7 points. Is it a great return? No. But as you say, they've played 3 big teams. They've got Liverpool, obviously Brentford and Sunderland. After the international break, they go to Anfield. It doesn't get any easier, but I think there are signs of progress. Not in results, not in consistency of performance, but, all the stats, and we were told that the hierarchy are quite comfortable with Ruben because all the data, points to the improvement of the team. XG, shots faced, I think shots on target, all those categories are kind of significantly up on last year. Now, fans will say and pundits will say, well, XG and whatever doesn't win you games. Of course it doesn't. But as we said earlier, if you can get that consistency of performance, the results will come eventually. So I think they can see we don't see training obviously on a regular basis. Ruben does, and he says he can see the improvement week in, week out in training. They're a better team than they've shown so far this season. Well, actions speak louder than words. It's now on the back of that Chelsea win. It's now time to go and prove that.
But as you've said, it's so important, isn't it? With up until the international break in October, another international break too in the space of 2 months. The fact they've got Brentford and Sunderland, which all of a sudden look like fantastic opportunities to win free on the bounce.
Yeah.
And they've not even won back-to-back league games. So there's a real potential there to go into the international break with momentum. You return against Liverpool and suddenly the mood's really bright. Yeah,
I mean, Brentford obviously has been a tricky ground in the past for United. I mean, they've obviously had some upheaval themselves, losing Thomas Frank and Buemo, Johan Wissa as well. There've been a lot of players that are left there. So they're having a difficult time at kind of adjusting to that. But these are the games, again, go back to what Luke Shaw was saying post Chelsea. These are the games United should be going into with the mindset of, we can win this and we should be winning this. Not going in there with this kind of, I wouldn't say trepidation, but this, and I wouldn't say an inferiority complex, but the Manchester United of old would have gone into these games, not even countenancing the fact that they could lose it, or let alone draw it, whatever. They go there with the mentality to win, and that's what this team has to have. That mindset has to develop it, and winning breeds confidence. Winning, and if they can get back-to-back wins and win on Saturday, they can take that into the Sunderland game. And it'll be a shame for them if they manage to get a couple of wins in the next 2 games. It'd be a shame for them that international break comes when it does, because you want to maintain that momentum that you've got. But of course, after the break, Liverpool, I mean, that's going to be a formidable test for them.
Well, 2 weeks ago, it looked a bit ominous, didn't it, that fixture? But all of a sudden, if they build some momentum and they go into, as we've said, the next international break with 3 wins or 2 wins and a point, you suddenly fancying their chances, aren't you? It's a weird game how things change. You're right, we're only 5 games into this Premier League season, but the Grimsby defeat and then the City defeat, together they weren't good, but that's the thing.
No, and there's no escaping that. But I think the hierarchy at United have felt, and with some justification in fairness, that there's been too much hiring and firing of managers. And I think also as well, Omar Barada, let's be honest, drove the appointment of Ruben Amorim. It was a personal appointment, really. There were lots of other candidates considered: Thomas Frank, Gareth Southgate, Marcus Silva was in the frame, and I think that's part of what led to Dan Ashworth's departure over the kind of appointment of Amorim and his style of play, his system.
There's a lot on the line, isn't there, with Barada, and I guess to a lesser extent Wilcox as well, because Ratcliffe has put his faith heavily in those two, and they need to get it right. As you said, Barada was heavily over the appointment of Amorim, and if it doesn't work out, does that reflect very badly on Barada? And
Absolutely.
Does then Ratcliffe make a change? Potentially, because we've seen how he's not afraid to make these changes, and he is quite ruthless.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I was saying about this reluctance to kind of, I wouldn't say pull the trigger on Ruben, but give him more time. The reluctance to sort of, as I say, make any snap judgments is because they've invested so much time in him and money, and there'd be huge reputational damage, not just to Ruben, but to the hierarchy here if it doesn't work out, because they've said, no, he's a man. Now, we've been here before with Erik ten Hag. I remember being...
Well, to botch that decision and then to botch the succession would be even worse, wouldn't it?
I mean, I remember being in the boardroom at Old Trafford at the start of last season, before the Liverpool game at Old Trafford, and Omar Barada said, no, Erik is our man. We've got 100% faith in him. And I said, look, even if you lose 3 or 4 on the bounce, in another terrible run, yeah, absolutely. And of course, 8 weeks later, he was gone. So, of course, they're never going to be honest and say, yeah, if he loses X, Y, and Z, he's gone. We're all grown up enough to realise that. But I think there's a real reluctance for it not to work with Ruben from the hierarchy, because, as I say, Omar Barada's invested his personal reputation. He's put it on the line by going all out for Ruben. So he has a real vested interest in it working out with Ruben. And I think, as I said at the start, the club realised that, what we're on now, the 6th permanent manager since Sir Alex Ferguson. I mean, it's just crazy. It's only been 12 years since Sir Alex stepped down in 2013. And we're already on the 6th permanent manager. And United are probably in a worse place now than they've ever been in that 12-year period. So that just shows you that the constant turnover of managers doesn't work. You have to give a manager time. Now, obviously, if it's not working and it's patently obvious it's not working, that's staring in your face, you have to make a decision. But I think they will wait as long as they can with Ruben, to give him the opportunity to turn things around. And as I said, they feel that the evidence behind the scenes, the data, what they see on the training pitch, all points to that. But that has to translate into results sooner or later.
Yeah, it's very encouraging.
Sooner rather than later, sorry.
Very encouraging when the data starts to point in the right direction, because we also the underlying stats of Erik ten Hag. But as you've said, results ultimately decide and dictate the narrative.
Yeah.
We'll move on then, because we'll briefly discuss Marcus Rashford, should we? It's a bit of a curveball, but I thought we'd end the podcast on that. I've just had a message from my editor about his incident at the weekend, of course, because he played brilliantly against Newcastle, scored 2 wonderful goals. Then his next game, I was just checking there, was it Gaddafi at the weekend, the 3-0 win?
Yeah.
But he turned up late.
2 minutes
He turned up late. I mean, it was 2 minutes, but it's still late.
It's still late.
Still late. He made an assist, didn't he? There have been concerns with Rashford, as we all know, about his off-pitch behaviour and his punctuality. And there was the Dublin incident, wasn't it, when he went on the drink?
Belfast,
sorry, yeah. Again, you don't want to get them two mixed up, do you?
No, definitely not.
So the Belfast boozer,
yeah.
His relationship broke down with Amorim last season, and a lot has been made about him having a clean slate at Barcelona. So from a Rashford perspective, a bit concerning to be late.
Yeah, really.
I know you're only saying it's 2 minutes, and it is 2 minutes.
But I mean, you just don't put yourself in that position.
Arrive 10 minutes early. Just like we did for the podcast with professionals.
Yeah, we couldn't get in, could we? We were that keen to get on air, we couldn't get in. It is a concern. I mean, in a funny way, even before that incident at the weekend, the 2 minutes late to a team meeting, which caused him to be dropped from the starting line. What dropped him? He was on the bench. He came off the bench, I think, and got an assist as well. But I think everyone thought that after his performance against Newcastle, there's 2 goals, the second one, absolute worldie, that he would start against Getafe, and he probably would have done. But discipline. Hansi Flick, has the same rules for every player. So he fell foul of that, and he was dropped to the bench. I think going back to the Newcastle game, people were saying, "Oh, look, Rashford's made a fool of Amorim with that." But I think that's the wrong take. Those goals, that header and that incredible strike from 25, 30 yards, underline just why Amorim was prepared to let him go, because he doesn't do that on a regular basis. He's got that in his locker. And yet,
and the fact that he's done it when
it.
He's against the British side in the Champions League.
Yeah.
He knows
all eyes are on him.
Exactly. And would he have done it in a different opponent? He would have looked at that game and thought, right, I really need to deliver here. Yamal was out. It was the perfect storm, wasn't it?
You can't pick and choose
exactly.
when you do that.
You need to do it every week.
I think, it wasn't mentioned. It was mentioned, I beg your pardon, in Amorim's pre-match press conference. Someone asked him about Rashford. And he said, look, he's not he's our player, so obviously he's on loan. But I said, I'm just focused on the players we've got in our squad at the moment. He was asked about Garnacho, obviously, who's now Chelsea, but again, he moved on. But I think if you were to sit down with Ruben Amorim, he would probably say, that is precisely why we let him go. Because, all right, he's got that in his locker, but we can't wait for him to do that every 10, 15 games or 20 games. What's he going to do the next game? And of course, we know he turned up late for the meeting and started on the bench. So I think, listen, Marcus Rashford is a wonderful, wonderful footballer. And it's just a shame, they often say, what's the saying, a talent unfulfilled, the greatest waste of all. And I don't want him to look back on his career. He's 27 now.
He's 27, he's not a kid now.
Yeah, I don't want him to look back on his career and think what might have been. I mean, he's achieved so much already in his career, but there's still so much he can achieve. And if that is kind of undermined by indiscipline and attitudinal kind of, attitude problems, that kind of thing, that would be a great shame. But I think, as I say, I think Amorim would say that's why we got rid of him, because he doesn't do that on a weekly basis, week in, week out. Every game we need him to be at that level, and he wasn't, and he certainly wasn't at that level in training. If you listen to what people around the club were saying, and that was one of the reasons why he was let out on loan in the second half of last season, and ultimately this season.
Paul Scholes has came out and done a podcast with Nicky Butt. I think they've launched it with Paddy McGuinness, I think.
Paddy McGuinness, yeah.
And he described Rashford as a disgrace. Some fans have reacted quite negatively to that because they've said it's a bit too far and a bit strong. Where do you stand? I would say Paul Scholes and former players who are still in the area will be privy to of what's gone on behind the scenes. Yeah. And there is a lot of stuff and kind of suggestions that have happened that haven't come to press, for example, and stuff that people haven't said. So that could be forming his opinion slightly behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It is strong, isn't it?
Yeah, it is strong. But I think at times, disgrace, it depends, it's all semantics, But
it wasn't great. It actually wasn't great. That's
it wasn't
a fact.
Great.
Yeah.
It wasn't great. And at times it probably was bordering on disgraceful, the lack of application. If you're at Manchester United, you've got to apply yourself every single day. It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest club in the world. And if you don't take the opportunity, more for you. And I think, at times, and you can see his body language during games. He wasn't tracking back. He wasn't committed. He had no kind of hunger about him, really. And so I think Paul Scholes is probably right. And back in that day, we're talking about different eras here, aren't we? We're talking about Scholes played 20 to 30 years ago. You're talking about a different era where players, maybe a more kind of, mollycoddled now. They're kind of more, they've got social media managers, they've got profiles, big profiles outside of football. Back when Scholes was playing, and of course it was still, they had profiles then, but it was more, you go on the pitch and you played and you delivered. Now, players have so much more around them and a team around them. And I just think that a lot of players, I'm not just saying Marcus, but a lot of players do surround themselves with the wrong people at times. And I think that can be reflected in their on-pitch performances. It can be reflected in their demeanour. It can be reflected in how they view the game and how they view playing. And I think with Marcus, he kind of probably lost his love of football for a while, which is a great shame. But hopefully he can get that love back. As I said,
we spoke to Nicky Butt, didn't we, actually, together, David, at the end of last season, outside Old Trafford by Victoria Warehouse, and we asked them about Rashford. And I think from their perspective, Nicky Butt's worked closely with Rashford.
Yeah.
He knows the talent that he's got, and then to see it kind of the last few years in the regression, that'll frustrate them because they know what he can do if he delivers each week and he's consistent and he works hard.
Yeah, I remember that chat we had with Nicky, and also I think Nicky was on the radio this week as well, talking about Rashford. And saying he wasn't surprised that he went. And he said he wasn't surprised that he left, albeit on loan, left Manchester United on loan. But, it would probably come at the right time for him. He'd probably run his course at Manchester United, and he needed a new challenge. He needed something to kind of galvanise him. But it is a great shame because, Manchester United, as we both know, and everybody knows, is built on youth. It's, going back to Sir Matt Busby, the Busby Babes, it's built on bringing young players through, young talent through the academy. And fans love to see that. They love to see particularly a local a youngster come through, and Marcus was that, and it's a shame when that doesn't work out. But equally, listen, we're in a different era now, the modern era of football now. One club players are very few and far between now. So I think we're going to see more of the kind of the Ryan Giggses and the Marcus Rashford staying for their whole career. That's not going to happen anymore because players do move and the turnover is so much greater.
This conversation's just made us think that we've forgotten something about the Chelsea game off the running order. What do you think of this? Academy graduate.
Oh, what the
questionable behaviour off the pitch?
What in terms of the
Alejandro Garnacho?
Oh,
but we didn't really mention him, did we, in the analysis of the game?
He didn't
play.
He didn't get on. That's probably why we didn't mention him.
The reception for him was probably to be expected, but it was
brutal.
It was loud. It was brutal.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he would have expected that, but I think everyone as journalists and fans knew it was going to be bad for him. It was going to be hostile.
Yeah.
He warmed up. He prepared to come on, but Maresca didn't put him on. He said in the presser that it wasn't to do with the reception. It was more tactical. But yeah, it wasn't.
I think he was warming up to come on, wasn't he? He had his tracksuit top off at one stage. He was ready to come on, and they changed their mind. I wonder how diplomatic Maresca was being there, because I think it would have been quite something to subject Garnacho to. But listen, I mean, he didn't help himself, Garnacho. I mean, I'm not. Listen, fans are entitled to vent their fury at ex-players if they feel that they've disrespected the club, and I think he did disrespect Manchester United. I think he probably made his bed and he has to lie in it in terms of the post-match comments after the Europa League final, where he was obviously on the bench and he came out and
that was the straw that broke the camel's back, wasn't it? When you think back, dropped from the derby in December, storms off down the tunnel against Ipswich at the end of February, apologises to the team, offers to pay for dinner. And then there's still some social media stuff rumbling in the background.
Well, his brother didn't help him, did he? Really?
His brother was there's another word, isn't it? Not I can't say this because we have sponsors, David.
Well, this goes back to what I was saying about players not surrounding themselves with the right people. I'm not saying it's not the players' fault because players are adults. Although in this case we're talking about young guys who are just 20, 21. That they don't tend to surround themselves with the right people, all the time, and that can have a negative impact on them. But I think with Garnacho, as I said, he didn't help himself when he came out and basically put his own interests above those of the team and saying, I don't know why I was dropped. We've had a terrible season. I won't use the word he used. As you say, we've got sponsors. But I'll have to see about my future then. And of course, that is not about the team. That's putting your own interests above those of the team. And Ruben Amorim, quite rightly, I think a couple of days later, didn't he had a team meeting and he called him out and said, I pray to God that you'll find a team that wants you. So I don't think he can have been surprised. Maybe he was, but I really don't think he can be surprised at the hostility that came his way on Saturday. If you do disrespect a team that has, let's not forget, Manchester United moved heaven and earth to sign him in COVID, I think, in 2020, and gave him a platform for him to turn around and disrespect the club the way he did. And of course, wearing the Marcus Rashford Aston Villa number 9 shirt, was such a provocative gesture that, some people would defend him and say, oh, it was just showing solidarity to a fellow member of the so-called bomb squad. But I mean, I think we all know the intention there. It was basically 2 fingers up at Manchester United and Ruben Amorim. So I don't think you can have any complaints if you act in a certain way, you act in a petulant way, in a provocative way, act like a sport brat, if you like. You get what's coming. He got off lightly because if he'd played, he'd probably got even more abuse.
It would have been amazing to see that reception if he came on. I was preparing myself for that. I was disappointed he didn't come on just for that.
It would have added a bit of extra spice to it. Not that they needed it in that kind of chaotic game, but
we'll leave it there. And David, how have you found your debut on the podcast?
I've enjoyed it, Steve. Yeah, it's been good fun. Yeah, look forward to the next one.
Well, we'll have plenty more to come. So I hope you have enjoyed it.
Hopefully, it's after back-to-back Premier League wins.
Well, exactly. It was nice to have some positivity today, wasn't it? Because it's been a really bad start of the season. It's nice to start your podcast, your era, with a positive win, a good performance as well.
Yeah, and hopefully that continues because, as I say, I've had 12 years of writing inquests in the post Alex Ferguson era, and a lot of United fans think that it's the whole kind of journalists want Manchester United to fail. Well, actually, it's a lot easier.
We've made this point.
It's a lot easier covering a club that are doing well,
and stories perform better when United do well, and the access is better.
Players want to talk.
Everything's
the
much
managers,
better.
the mood around the club is better, and. It's been a difficult decade plus, since Sir Alex retired, but again, I made this point in a piece I wrote yesterday that I've been privileged to travel the world with Manchester United for almost a quarter of a century now, going on the, pre-season tours to America, to Australia, to the Far East, to South Africa. even in crisis, which they effectively have been for the last 12 years, they are still the biggest pull in world football, bar Real Madrid and Barcelona.
It's like I've got Ed Woodward sitting next to us. Do you remember the famous quote? Performance doesn't have a bearing on results, financial results.
I mean, they have. And
it's true.
You see that every week at Old Trafford, 75,000 come through the door, and there's waiting lists and everything. It's just, the global pull and appeal of United has never waned. Now, whether it remains to be seen whether if this period of decline does continue, whether that does change. But the last decade, it hasn't been the case, and so you go on the evidence of that, and it would seem to suggest that not. But I think, as I said at the start here, this section of the podcast, there's a perception amongst United fans that journalists, want United to fail, take glee in United failing. Not true. It's far easier covering a club that are doing well, that are successful, where the mood is buoyant, than one where it's all sort of self-recrimination. You've got to, point fingers at people, that kind of thing. So, fingers crossed. And I think everyone wants, go back to Ruben Amorim being, a nice guy, charismatic guy, open guy with us. With that in mind, you want him to succeed because, he is clearly committed to the club, wants to give his all and is giving his all. And on that basis, you hope he succeeds on a personal level.
So you'd be joining the chance turn the Reds around, the Bonnie-Tyler.
I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, maybe not that. Thanks for your time, David.
Cheers, thanks, Steve.
Thanks to listeners as usual. We'll be back later in the week to look ahead to the Brentford game. Have a good week.